Hi everyone, welcome back to the Score podcast. As you'll see, we have a new look. The Score rebrand happened last week and it is looking awesome. As always, I'm Lilly Douse and I'm going to be the host for this podcast. And you're listening to the third episode of the Score podcast, Score Vision Subnet 44. Coming up on today's show is none other than Tim Scores co-founder and CTO.
So ultimately what we're looking to do is unlock human level AI.
We also have Nick Compton, former England international and now Scores head of sports partnerships.
It's grueling, it's intense. It's as much a sort of mental, attritional battle as it is a physical one.
And Nathan Leamon, the chief data analyst for England cricket team and one of the most respected voices in cricket data analytics.
We got slagged off in the press. They called us cheats. It did win as a World Cup.
We've got a packed episode ahead. First, we're going to hear from Tim on what Subnet 44 is, how it works, and why BitTensor's initiatives make it a breakthrough in decentralized machine learning. Then we'll switch over to cricket. Nick and Nathan will be talking about the evolution of data in the game, what they've seen from the inside elite dressing rooms, and where AI is heading next. But before we get into all of that, let's take a moment to hear from Tim about Score's mission and vision. So Tim, why don't you take it away and explain a little bit more about Score's mission and vision?
So Score, we've all come here really to democratize visual intelligence by building a permissionless computer vision layer for people to build AI apps on top of. So ultimately what we're looking to do is unlock human level AI by building this universal computer vision infrastructure. And through doing this, we want to enable hundreds or thousands of people to come and utilize bleeding edge technology to build the next generation of sports apps.
And this week, we are diving deeper into BitTensor's Subnets and Score Vision Subnet 44 specifically. So, Tim, let's explain a little bit about what the subnets are, what happens on them, and what they enable.
Right, BitTensor. BitTensor is an unusual project. It's essentially an on-chain project, so it's a Web3 project, which generally scares a lot of people off. But I would say that BitTensor really is a project or a protocol, shall I say, which really makes the most of the decentralized infrastructure or what decentralized infrastructure has to offer. And it does this by essentially allowing a network of what they call subnets to operate on chain. So a subnet is a specialized decentralized network built on BitTensor, and each subnet is designed to solve specific AI and machine learning challenges. It ultimately leverages collective intelligence, competitions, decentralized incentives to continuously advance AI models. Subnets are they run 24/7, right? So it's like a competition that is running, it's open, anyone can join it. It runs literally 24/7, and miners are continuously optimizing their models to compete. Validators, who are another party within BitTensor, are like the referees, and they reward the winners. And through this competition of miners competing and validators rewarding the miners with the who are performing the best, we see this continual improvement of the quality of the models that are being produced. So it's a really fascinating technology, and we're ultimately using it to be able to very quickly get the best in class or state of the art models across various different challenges through initially football, but hopefully soon cricket as well.
And where do the incentives on the subnet come from?
The incentives on the subnet come from every day, essentially, or every block, to get a little bit technical. BitTensor has these things called emissions. So they essentially distribute this token called dTAO to all the participants in the network. So they are essentially they have this emissions network, which is putting dTAO out into the miners, to the validators, and to the subnet owners. And dTAO has a value. So by participating within the network, you can earn dTAO or dTAO, which we'll come onto in a moment. And that dTAO can be sold for dollars, US dollars, or for fiat currency. So essentially, we have this bootstrap network where there is emissions, there is money available for the participants, and that's been really helpful to ensure that we have, this competition which the rewards are significant to win.
And this is the fundamentals behind decentralization. It provides these advantages by the miners getting these initiatives from on the subnet, and then, as you say, they can then convert that into fiat, which means they're earning whilst they're still supporting the network.
The better, like as a miner, the better your model performs, the more dTAO that you earn. But that you've also got other people all trying to compete as well. We have literally hundreds of miners that are competing, all fine tuning their models, and this creates this competition really. And they're benefiting because they're earning this dTAO, but we're also benefiting by being able to rapidly move forward at a pace and improve the quality of the models that are being created. So it's a sort of, at the moment, it's a win-win, for all participants.
Yeah, and you mentioned dTAO earlier, so can you explain a little bit about what that is?
dTAO, delegated dTAO, essentially allows people that hold dTAO to stake their dTAO into different subnets. By staking your dTAO into a subnet, you essentially receive back this dTAO or dynamic dTAO, which is the subnet's alpha token. There are a lot of different names that are used for this token, which doesn't help the complexity of it. But essentially, our subnet token is Subnet 44 token, SN44. So when people stake dTAO into our subnet, they receive Subnet 44 token. When they effectively unstake Subnet 44, they receive their dTAO back. The price of the Subnet 44 token is priced in dTAO. So the more people that buy the Subnet 44 token, the relative price in dTAO goes up, and subsequently, the more people that sell the Subnet 44 token reduces the price in dTAO. So it essentially allows participants in the network, people that hold dTAO, to vote for which subnets they believe in. But because by buying a subnet or staking dTAO onto a subnet, you believe that the price of that subnet is going to increase, and therefore you're going to earn more.
So you can really pick your project.
Yeah. So before, it was really there's a group of 10 to 20 validators who determine the emissions. They determine who got how much dTAO every day. Now it's driven completely by dTAO holders. So it's really the market that is driving the emissions schedule, or which manifests itself in the ranking of subnets, from 1 to 120, I think, right now. So it's a lot more market driven. It means that there needs to be a lot more forward facing or front facing behavior, where subnet owners need to explain what they're doing. They need to market their product. They need to monetize their products. So it's really put the pressure onto the subnet owners to ultimately make real businesses out of subnets. And we've done very well. That's suited our business because we are genuinely making a very exciting business, and the market has recognized that by us shooting up the ranks, and I think we're at 8 or 9, the top 10 now, which is fantastic for us.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it really has created like friendly competition, shall we say, because you need to attract those miners and really showcase why they want to be part of your project, why they want to be staking on Subnet 44, which is it's a very unique way of utilizing the structure. But I really like it. That's It's awesome. And how does Score use the outputs from the miners?
So the miners currently, so we have like quite a long roadmap as to where we are now and where we want to be. So right now, the miners are essentially they're doing AI labeling. So they're drawing bounding boxes and key points around each frame on in a video. At the moment, we're using this data to train we'll do some testing of training of neural nets that we're creating. And we're also storing this data because there is some interest from some of the early data consumers, like an OpenAI, Anthropic, who are sort of desperate for this type of labeled video data. So that's how it's being used currently. We're getting to a point now where the data is good enough to be able to essentially determine the XY coordinates of everything on the pitch at every frame. And once we have this, there is a lot of data that can be inferred from this, so we can work out, who the ball's getting passed to, how fast the pass was, how fast people were running, how fast they were accelerating, how their work rate has changed over time, what their coverage of the pitch is. So a lot of the visualizations that you may see, on the BBC or the Sky, or a lot of the media broadcasts, they essentially produce these visualizations, and the majority of that, really, the foundation of that is knowing where everything is at every point in time. So once we're right at the sort of edge of being able to confidently produce this type of data day in, day out, we will be able to start to create those visualizations, which start to become interesting for and open up the possibilities of some of these simple apps and simple visualizations to be built on the data that we're producing.
Tim, why don't you explain a little bit about the roadmap and the importance of how we see things progressing with Score?
So the roadmap at Score really is underpinned by a 3-step strategy. So the first step is perception, the second step is understanding, and the third step is prediction. So perception is currently what we're doing at the moment. And when I say perception, that's really understanding what is on the screen, the objects on the screen at every given point in time. So right now it's player, ball, and pitch tracking. Soon it's going to be team detection and individual player identification. And then we have this really nice wrapped up for football specifically. We completed the perception side of things. The next stage is understanding. So understanding is essentially going beyond just knowing what objects are on the screen, but actually knowing what is actually happening on the screen in these series of clips or series of frames. So that's things like, when is the ball in play? Has there been a red card? Has there been a goal? Has the second half just started? Has the game finished? So this is sort of like understanding of, okay, it's great we know where everything is, but what is actually going on? This is challenging, but this is the next stage of this event recognition or action recognition that will be on the subnet.
What is the time frame for this kind of development as well?
Like this is all going to be hopefully this side of Christmas, to have the understanding and the perception. The deception most definitely, and the understanding. The understanding is challenging. Like doing this majority of labeling, or the majority of data that's produced in this way, it's very easy for a human to see, the ball's gone out and then the ball's gone in at this time, and do a timestamp. For a pure AI model, or computer vision model, to understand like the ball's gone out and then now it's gone back in again, is actually quite challenging. So there's a lot of work to do around both the miners creating the models to be able to do this, and then also us being able to validate or check the work of the miners. But we would like to do this all pre-Christmas. So the final stage is prediction. So once we know where everything is, and then we know what's happening, so these key events or key actions that are happening within a game, understanding what is going to happen becomes this really interesting thing, where it's like, is there going to be a goal in the next 10 seconds or 20 seconds or minute? understanding future actions, these future actions based on the current set of data that we have up until that point, will be the final challenge that we'll be putting out to the subnet. It's a very different type of channel. This challenge, this effectively means the miners will be training these neural nets based on enormous amounts of data, and that will be simulated data, which we're doing at the moment. We're simulating millions and millions of football games, as well as real data, so that we're fine-tuning on the real data. This becomes very valuable. And just listening to Nick talk about cricket, I can see this being applicable, like all three stages really being applicable to cricket and the work that these guys are looking at, but also different sports, but also different verticals. You take this concept of perception, understanding, and then prediction. And then this becomes a very, very valuable product. So the prediction thing is most likely going to be more into next year.
Amazing. Yeah, timeframes always are so short as we enter into Web3. So it's keeping things as rapid as possible. But it sounds like you guys are super on top of it. That's a very exciting roadmap. I want to also say to everyone in our community, make sure to send us the questions, leave them in the comments, because I'm sure there's definitely a lot more discussions that are going to be opened up just by our little conversation here. And also, everyone, join our Discord. The link is in the description, so please do reach out to us. We want as many questions as possible. I feel like, Tim, you touched on a lot there, but it is a very complicated realm to be entering into, so we want to make sure that the audience understands as much as possible. But yeah, you nailed that explanation.
Yeah, thanks, Lilly.
And now it is time to switch to cricket. I am very excited to have our speakers join us for this. So let's start with Nick. Why don't you just introduce yourselves to everyone out there and tell us about your career and who you are?
Hi, Lilly. Hi, everyone out there. My name's Nick Compton. I was a former England cricketer, played professional cricket for about 20 years. As you can tell from the horrible twang in my voice, I came from South Africa, grew up there, but had a very famous grandfather who had a prestigious career over here. And when I came over as a little boy, I wanted to follow in his footsteps. I walked around Lord's Cricket Ground, which is a very famous cricket ground here in the UK, and that really broadened my eyes and perspective and made me really sort of understand what English cricket was about, the history, and I really wanted to be a part of that. So I can safely say that, sort of 25 years on, I've been there and done it. I played 16 test matches, which I was very fortunate to play in some very iconic series, both in India and in South Africa. We won both of those, which was a fantastic experience. And I think that since my cricket career sort of finished, I've transitioned into sort of the media commentary and a lot of visual storytelling with my camera as well. But I've also become quite deeply involved in sort of business and technology and that side of sport. I worked for Middlesex sort of commercially after I retired, helping the club sort of understand more about professional structures in other sports. So going to places like Arsenal and Chelsea and really understanding what they were doing in football and to see if there's any opportunities or any correlation or parallels or to bring over to cricket. So here I am. I find myself here now working with Score, which has been really interesting, super innovative and really exciting.
Yeah, and for you, what would you say the impact of data was in your career or as you progress into retirement? How has it been extremely important?
Well, funny enough, and I wasn't a data man, I have to be honest. Growing up, it was all about feel. It was all about watching your heroes and working out how to become better, in the nets and in practice. But actually, I don't think people would know this, but data really changed my professional career in a really big way. As a young player, you're kind of searching for that bit of gold, both in your own game. How can I get better? How can I improve? What is it that I need to do to reach the heights of, my grandfather or other heroes that were on my screen? And it was only when I really sat down with a professional mentor and a coach that ended up working with me for the sort of next 10 years, where we sat down and really dialed down on the data, on the statistics, on the numbers. Because, as a batsman, for those who watch cricket, it's all about your numbers. I think when you dial it down, any given game that you go into, there's a target, there's there's a number that you're aiming for, and whether that's a 50 or 100, where the crowd will applause. Those are sort of, targets that have, I'm not quite sure where they've come from. Maybe Nathan can help me there a little bit, but from history, there's always been a target for a batsman, and trying to understand a little bit more about those, delving into that. So how do I get those numbers? And for me, it was very much working backwards. I'd been successful. I had some ups, I had some downs, but the consistency wasn't there. And when I sat down and actually looked at the players that I wanted to emulate and looked at their numbers and delved into even deeper numbers in terms of breaking it down into actual specific matches, specific sessions, I started to understand what I needed to do and how far I was off. So the numbers gave me real clarity in terms of what I needed to go out and achieve. And I think once I knew what those numbers were, during game day, instead of getting wrapped up in the emotion of the day and the game, and we know that sport's very heightened, when it comes to emotions. And I think you've got to wear that on your sleeve a little bit. Most professional players have that emotion, have that hunger, have that drive, and I think you need that. But I think once you've got that, it was about putting that to one side and really understanding what I needed to achieve on the day. And once I knew those sort of numbers and averages, because I think if I knew those numbers and averages, and I knew that if I achieved those, then my goal would be a lot closer. And obviously the goal was to play international cricket and play for England. And I knew if I achieved some of those numbers that I would then be spoken about. So it was a huge transformation in the way I looked at cricket and looked at my own game. And I became far more businesslike about my preparation.
And then how did you end up at Score? What was it that excited you about this project?
Yeah, I met one of the founders, Nigel, in South Africa. I realized that, the sort of data world and sport is still in quite its early days, but, I was fascinated about sort of the intersection between sport, performance, and technology. And Nigel and I had a number of conversations about this, what he was doing with Score. But I think also the ambition of the company to really try and build something meaningful in sport. I know obviously football's been, the first sort of goal, so to speak. But I think, cricket being played globally around the world offers a huge opportunity as well. So I sort of saw an opportunity, and perhaps he did, to bring my on-field experience, perhaps my network as well, and ability, to storytell and to help shape, that vision. I think particularly in cricket, it's about asking the right questions. And I think that intersection between lots of numbers and data and how to use that efficiently or effectively on the field, I think, is not easy to do, because, players or sportsmen we're quite simple at heart, I'd say. And being able to really dial down those numbers and find the ones that really impact that particular individual, not just the team, because I think the coaches have got enough to deal with, but I think players can use it a lot better than they currently do.
Yeah, and then I know you've mentioned about how data was important in your career and kind of pushing you further, but how do you see data and also AI impacting cricket going into the future as well?
I think it'll just be, instead of being an afterthought, I think it'll be quite a central pillar. I think a lot of players are still trying to work out how much to use and how much not to use, and then some players get too caught up in it and then sort of try and go the other way again. So I think finding that balance is still very much something that's in the works, in progress. I sort of feel that a lot of the scouting, decision making, and player sort of matching process will really come to the fore. I think there's a lot of work to still be done there. I think tactical flexibility as well. I think a lot of AI and data has been very team focused, so match up shot selection. But I'm quite interested in potentially on the technical rebuilding of individual players' techniques, being able to really look at how were they moving when they were playing really well versus when they're not playing so well. I'd love to understand the sort of, really get into the detail of that. And I think sort of in Test cricket, sort of basics are very important, adaptation to match situations, in play kind of, advantages. Can coaches use that in play rather than just arriving before a game and sort of trying to work out, okay, on this surface, these are scores or whatever. I think there's going to be a lot more in play kind of, coaching. I think scouting is already a big one. But that sort of personalized coaching plans, I think, will be really interesting as I look at it from a a past player, place. I really like to understand how we can sort of, incorporate it into players' coaching and really become more specific with, their direction. So I think there's a multitude of ways that it can go forward, but I think the scouting will be fascinating, particularly when you think of countries like India and Pakistan, etc.
Yeah, and of course you have the experience kind of in both as well, being a player and now working in business and tech. You kind of see it from both perspectives. But how do you think we can help people, translate tech into the real game, or is that already being done pretty well?
I think it is being done. I think people like Nathan, who I brought on the call today, I think has been very much a pioneer of cricket data. He was somebody I worked with when I played for England. So when I first came into the England team, Nathan was there. And that for me as a player was unusual. I hadn't seen a data analyst in our changing room before. We'd had, sort of assistant coaches and what have you. And I know that Nathan was pretty instrumental in working with Andy Flower, who was a very successful is a very successful coach, but particularly successful during his period with England. And when I came in, it was probably the first insight that I had into proper team data. I think county cricket, does it loosely, a few understandings of, who you're coming up against, who the team are, what their stats are like, and, how they've done. But it wasn't in great detail. And I think when I joined the England team, to sit down and actually have video conferences, about, the players you're going to come up against, particularly someone like myself who was new to international cricket. I hadn't played against a lot of these guys. Sure, I'd seen them on TV, but understanding, their effectiveness at the particular ground and where they were at. And then looking at it from a team perspective, and Nathan won't mind me saying here, but I remember the focus we had as a batting unit was to get 400 runs in the first innings. Now, for me, that helped hugely because it simplified everything. We had an extremely talented group of batsmen, and I'd just come in. I was new to the team. And so when we broke it down, you thought, right, 400 in the first innings. Why 400? Well, 400, there was obviously a stat behind that if you got 400 in the first innings of a test match, you had I don't know, I'm going to throw it out there, 85%, better chance of coming out on the good side of the game. It didn't necessarily mean you'd win the game, but your chances of losing obviously decreased. So as a batting unit going out there, I then sort of worked backwards and thought, well, what role can I play to get us to 400? Where were my qualities? Where were my strengths? And if you compared that to the other players in the team, I worked out that if I could spend as much time out there in the middle, really nullifying the opposition, which were India at the time, then it would allow the stroke players and the players who are more experienced and have been around for a long time to really sort of play their game. So, that probably looks at like quite a basic statistic, but for me it was really instrumental, and I think winning that series. And Nathan was very much behind that. So, look, I think it is being integrated. It's being integrated more and more, particularly when you look at these franchise tournaments around the world. I mean, they're everywhere now. Tournaments are popping up here, there, and everywhere. And I think coaches and particularly owners are looking at better ways to select and scout, and I think one of the big things is the IPL at the moment, which I know a couple of coaches who are in the IPL and trying to scout for them isn't the easiest thing, because your stats in India versus your stats elsewhere often aren't comparable. Playing well in India is a very different prospect to playing well in a franchise tournament in South Africa or Australia. So there's definitely a lot of work to be done, but fascinated to be a part of it and to really try and sort of bridge that gap between the player and the AI and the data.
Wow, that's super interesting. Yeah, it's a great perspective to have on how Score is going to be so important going into the future. So, Nathan, why don't you please introduce yourself, tell us a bit about yourself, and also explain a little bit about your career.
My name's Nathan Leamon. My background, as well as sport, was maths. And so my first sort of entry into sports analysis was in 2009 when I was recruited to work with the England cricket team. It was very much the early days of data being used in sport. Michael Lewis had written Moneyball, and coaches around the world had read it, and there was this explosion of people saying, we want to try and do that. So that was what I was sort of tasked with at first. I worked with the England team for I worked with the England Test team until 2016, and then I focused exclusively on the white ball team, so the 20 and 50 over formats. I since worked with Multan Sultans in the Pakistan Super League, where I'm their director of strategy, and I work with Calcutta Knight Riders in the IPL as their strategy consultant. So when I started, there was basically no set way of using data in cricket. So most of the tools that I used for the first 5 years, I had to invent myself. And I think the way I normally describe analysis in sport is that it's about making the invisible visible. So it's about allowing coaches and players to see things that they can't see just by watching the game and by playing it. So the first evolution of analysis comes when you get cheap, readily available video cameras. So suddenly the thing that you could watch once in real time and never see again, you can play back, you can slow it down, you can freeze frame. So you can start to, in a chaos game like rugby or football, you can watch it over and over again and slow it down, and you can understand the patterns that are going on within the game. In a highly technical sport like golf or tennis or cricket, where you've got these very complex, very, very high speed actions, you can slow those down and you can analyze technique in a way that you can see parts of technique that you can't see with the naked eye. And so it doesn't tell you how to play the game. It doesn't tell you what you should do, but it enables you to see things and gives you information to make better decisions about what you should do. And data is basically the same thing, but at scale. So what data does is it allows you to see patterns across thousands of games, across millions of balls, that you wouldn't ever notice or detect just by watching in real time. And again, it doesn't tell you what to do. It doesn't tell you how to play or which players to pick, but it gives you better information to make those decisions that you're going to make anyway.
Yeah, and being an early data pioneer in cricket, what were the challenges? Like, obviously, cricket is a very traditional sport. So how did you kind of trying to change the mindset and help people to trust data?
The technical challenges were that there were no tools. So these days there are, countless analysis companies who have bespoke cricket software, and you can use that very quickly and very easily. I was working with CSV files in Excel and having to sort of do calculations almost by hand at the start. So that was the sort of the technical side of getting up and running. And then, I've always said that when it comes to data in sport, the maths is the easy bit. The analysis is the easy bit. The difficult bit is making sure that what you learn has some effect on the pitch. And so that's about just building relationships with players and coaches, getting them to trust you, because they'll never really. You come across occasional captains or coaches who will understand what you're doing, like fully understand what you're doing, and they're like gold dust to work with. But most of them, what you want them to do is trust you. So then when they ask you what you think, they ask me what I think. They know that what I'm doing is I'm telling them what I've discerned from the analysis and the data that I've looked through. They don't want to hear about variance and all the stuff that we're Markov chains. So a good example of someone who was very easy to work with would be Owen Morgan, who was the England white ball captain for a long time, and he was one, very intelligent, two, very calm and experienced, but most importantly, he was a gambler. And what gamblers do is they think probabilistically. So the most common misconception when players and coaches ask you what to do is they think you can give them the right answer. you can tell them how they're going to win the game, and you can't tell them what the right team is. You can't tell them what the right decision at the toss is. All you can give them is probabilities, and you can give them, when gamblers place bets, they don't do it because they think that horse will win, but they think the odds are wrong. And that's what you're looking for with analysis. You're looking for the solution that gives you the best probability of success.
Very interesting. And was there a moment in time that it's most significant for you when you found there was a great impact of obviously we've been saying it's not quite the data that you're giving them, but the advice that you're giving, and kind of when did you find that you were getting the best results? Was it that you were simplifying it, making it into more like probability rather than actually just statistics?
I mean, one of the most interesting projects I was involved with was something called the in-game decision-making system. So this was in T20 cricket. So T20 cricket is played over 20 overs. You bowl 20 overs. Each of your bowlers can only bowl 4 overs. So the decision about who bowls the next over each decision is deploying a large chunk of your resources. So you're deploying 25% of that bowler's balls that he's going to bowl in the game, and you're making a decision about 5% of the innings. So in the longer formats, those bowling changes are not, they don't carry as much of a swing in terms of your win probability. So what we did was we built a system that predicted, given the batsman, given the bowler, and the two batsmen, and given the bowler and the surface that they were playing on, it made a prediction about the expected number of runs and wickets that would occur in that next over and the impact that would have on the game. That then allowed you to rank your bowlers about how well they would go or were likely to do against the two batsmen who were at the crease. And we could run that system in real time, and then I would signal. We had a signaling system out to the middle where the captain would make the ultimate decision. But it was what we knew was that the captain could see things that the model couldn't, and the model could see things that the captain couldn't about how the game was likely to evolve. So we needed a system that enabled us to combine the two in real time. So we came up with these signals, and that worked quite well. It came out of chess, actually. So when Deep Blue beat Kasparov in about 2000, it seemed like for the rest of recorded time, the best chess player in the world would be a computer, but actually it isn't. So Kasparov started this game called, I think it's called free chess or freestyle chess, where you play as a team, and the team can be a team of humans, it can be a team of computers, or it can be a mixed team. And the best players in the world at the moment with the highest rankings are cyborgs. They're a mixture of human and machine intelligence. Because there are parts of chess, and I don't know enough about chess to explain it, but there are parts of chess that the sort of the overall patterns and the overall strategy that the humans are still better than the computers, which are much better at the tactical level of predicting a certain number of moves ahead. And so if you can combine the two, then you're a better player than either the machine or the human. So that was what we were trying to do with that system. And we got slagged off in the press. They called us cheats. But
it's not cheating.
It did win as a World Cup.
This is absolutely fascinating. I feel like I could ask you questions forever, because I really do find it super interesting of how these kind of tactics and strategy can all come from understanding more about data. But let's get you both involved in the discussion. So I just obviously asked Nathan about how people adopted this kind of form of data analytics at first. So Nick, as someone that was there also as a player, did you find there was a lot of resistance from the dressing room when people were having these discussions? And what was kind of your view when this was first brought to market?
Yeah, I think it is fascinating. I think it's interesting. I think Nathan alludes to it quite well in terms of the type of captain and personnel that you have in charge at the time. I think cricket goes through different eras. you walk into different changing rooms with a specific type of coach and captain who are very, let's say, data driven or inquisitive, or have an appetite for increased knowledge, and that might go down to numbers. And therefore, I think the team sort of can take, very much follow in that kind of path in many ways, because I think you sort of, very much join that culture and you want to be a part of it. I think it is largely individual. I think some players were very, interested in the data, while other players tried to stay as far away from it as possible. I think, it was the sort of, it probably presented for some players an overload or an overstimulation of information. I think what is a challenge for a player is to absorb data, but then go back to keeping it a very simple game, because we can confuse it. There's a lot of overthinking, particularly in cricket. We've got a lot of time to sit and think, and that can be a real detriment for a lot of players. So to be able to sort of have your cricket intelligence, but then be able to apply that in a very simple fashion out in the middle, I think is where the key is really, and where the players who really excel for a number of years are able to do that. They keep the game very simple, but my word, are they very cricket intelligent. They have a very good understanding of what of data, for example, and they would have processed that, but then the output, they're able to take that and put it on the pitch in quite a simple way, whereas other players found it too much and very much an overload. So I think it is largely driven down to, how you've been educated on the data, and also how you're able to incorporate it into your own practice. And I think that's, that can come down to the personnel that are very much involved at the time.
Yeah, and a question kind of for both of you is, how do you see AI playing a bigger role in cricket over the next 5 years? Nathan, is someone that, constructed a lot of these models as well. Does it ever scare you about how much AI will change the landscape of cricket?
I mean, I think the way in which it has the potential to change things is, if you think about how we've always tried to make decisions over the last 10 or 15 years, it's been with good, rigorous data and information, the best information, best data we can find, with the various metrics built on top of that. And then at the other end of the scale, you've got the best expert knowledge that you can find, be that players, coaches, selectors, etc. So if you're looking at selecting a player to play for England, say, you're going to get the view of the best judges, the best human judges, and you're going to look as rigorously as you can about his data, and then you're going to combine those two in the decision making process. I think what AI has the chance to do, if you're talking about those second and third layers that Tim was describing earlier, after perception, then you're able to generate not just dot for wicket 6 and then process that level of data. You are able to annotate a lot more nuance as to the quality of play, and the likelihood of success in terms of what someone's doing. And once you can put that sort of expert judgment onto, but do it at scale, because the limitation of your experts is they can only watch a certain amount of cricket. They can only watch a few hundred balls in a day. If you can put that sort of expert judgment onto the sort of scale that we have for data across thousands of matches and hundreds of thousands of balls, then you have something which is far more powerful than either, if that makes sense. And the scary thing about AI is you don't understand it. So for years I've been building models about how cricket worked, and often the best thing that I got out of the model was an increased understanding as to how cricket worked. And I might use the model, I might not, but I always use the understanding. And you work in AI, and computer says no. It's a black box. You don't understand how it's coming to the judgments that it's coming to. So.
Yeah, expertise and definitely human interaction with AI will be extremely important. And talking about expertise, I want to get your guys' opinion on something. So Obviously, the England and India match very recently, there were no subs, and Wokes had to come into bat with his arm in a sling. So, what were your guys' thoughts on this as well? It's very topical, so we want to hear what you guys think about it.
Nathan, I think you should go first.
Well, it was typical Wokesy for a start. I mean, he is the nicest man in cricket, and one of the most sort of serially underrated. But he would die for the team, and he was willing to come out, and it was just a great moment of drama, wasn't it? I mean, there was the drama of the situation. There was him coming down, the bravery, the pathos. I mean, when he the comedy when I don't know if you saw, he ran a quick single, his arm fell out of his sling, so he had to take his glove off to put his arm back in his sling, and then he couldn't put his glove back on, and the umpire had to put his glove back on for him. And so it was one of those sort of very, very, it's one of those moments where you're watching it, you're going, this is one of those memorable moments. Do you know what I mean? People will talk about this in 20 years' time. As to subs, I think I understand why it's entered the conversation, because the head injury concussion subs have sort of opened the door, and people have. There's never really been any suggestion that subs should come into the game, but with the concussion subs coming in, then the obvious question is, well, why not for any injury? And the problem is injuries are on a scale. Injuries are on, there's no fast bowler not carrying an injury of some degree at any given moment, be it somewhere from niggle to can't bowl, and they, and it limits their performance, and it limits what they can do in a day, but they're all carrying minor injuries of some. It's just, fast bowling is brutal to the body. So, at what point do you go, well, my hamstrings got tighter, I'm bringing another guy in fresh? I think the mechanics of trying to make it work fairly without teams taking advantage of it just don't make sense. But you have to for concussion subs, just because the second impact is so dangerous. So if someone has a head injury, has a brain injury, it's not safe to let them out there. But if you don't replace them, they will almost insist on going out there. So it's a way of getting round players doing something which is very dangerous for them, basically, and taking that decision off the coach, off the medics, off the players. Yeah, Nick.
No, I very much second what Nathan said. I think firstly about Chris Wokes, I played a lot of cricket with him and against him, and obviously a very likable guy, very much a team man, and it would have been a real fairy tale if he had sort of had to face one ball and got an inside edge for 4 or something to win the match. So I think we're all sort of, as England fans, hoping something like that would happen. I think in terms of the subs, I'm quite a purist, maybe a traditionalist in some ways. I grew up with the sort of hardened view of Test cricket being the true test. It's 5 days long. For those who don't know a lot about cricket, it's grueling, it's intense. It's as much a sort of mental, attritional battle as it is a physical one. So in many ways, it's sort of it's about the sort of guys standing up and seeing who's there still at the end of 5 days. You know what I mean? There's a lot to be said for that, and the fitness and what have you. So if someone does get injured, well, some people will say, well, that's part of the game and it's unlucky. Looking at it perhaps more from a sort of, looking at it from where cricket is at the moment, with the amount of cricket that's being played, with a focus on very much the T20 format, franchise cricket around the world, players are being pulled from different formats in different directions more often than they were, say, 10, 15 years ago. So the focus on Test cricket isn't perhaps what it was. There's talk about the top 3 teams, sort of England, India and Australia sort of holding Test cricket together is a sort of relevant talking point. So in some ways, I think that perhaps there might be an opportunity now with the amount of cricket that's being played to potentially have a one sub, to call it a sort of opportunity or a one sub policy where it may also just give a little bit of an edge to the test match now, where you're bringing in a fresh player perhaps at a given choice, and could add a different dimension. And I say that sort of loosely, in terms of, the innovations to the game and how they're moving forward. But I think at heart, get out there and play with the team you've got. And if you get injured, well, it's tough. And, that's how it should be played. And that's how it's always been played. But, I think now there's so many players playing so much cricket. It's hard to keep everyone fit. You look at this test series, I think there was a couple of bowlers who played all 5 tests, which was an amazing effort in itself. But there might be an opportunity there to bring a one sub policy or something.
Thanks, Nathan and Nick, so much for joining us on this podcast. It has been fascinating to talk all things cricket and how AI is completely revolutionizing the landscape. So thanks for your insights. We'll see you soon. And that is a wrap on episode 3 of the Score podcast. Today, we explored the power of Score Vision Subnet 44, how it brings together global machine learning talent in a clinicianless competition to improve real-time visual intelligence. From the pitch to the protocol, Score is building the optic nerve of AI, and we're just getting started. Stay tuned for episode 4. It will be a special one. We'll be talking more about our rebrand, why we're doing it, what's changing, and how it connects to our vision for the future of decentralized intelligence. Until then, if you like this episode, please like, subscribe, and leave us a comment with your thoughts or questions. I'm sure you have quite a few, and we love hearing from our community. To learn more, please visit our new rebranded teaser website, wearescore.com. And if you haven't yet, I don't know how you're missing this out, please join our Discord via the link in our description. You'll find real-time updates, community discussions, and ways to get involved. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.